to the events of the Shiva Trilogy. So there were clues that were there in Secret of the Nagas, Oath of the Vayuputras, that have been linked up for example, in Sita, Warrior of Mithila, which was released many years later, or Ravan, Enemy of Aryavarta. So these stories are actually all linked to each other. And all my books and series that I will build over time, either myself directly or through the Writers' Center, will tell the story of what I call the Vedic people of our age, from their rise, at the end of the last great ice age, around 12,000 years ago, to the destruction of their way of life, and we are their unworthy descendants. Their destruction of their way of life with the war that we call the War of the Mahabharata, 3,500 years ago. So yes, these stories are all linked. It's the high points and the low points. So I've left clues for many of them. Hopefully there'll be some other fiction also that will come up in this.
Thank you. So let's all look for those clues in the books that you have not read, and if you have, let's go back to them. Our heritage and our history has so much to teach us, yet our education system is quite colonial. We still suffer from the colonial hangover. Few people know that the Sanskrit manuscripts, we have around 3 million of them, even though Nalanda and Takshila got destroyed. So how, when we were kids, we used to read Amar Chitra Katha. But today's education system, we don't have much of it. How should we bring our heritage, rich heritage, to our children today?
I think the best way to answer this is through a pop quiz. So everyone knows, right? Greece is the mother culture of Europe. Yeah. So the number of Greek handwritten manuscripts that survive till today is between 21 to 25,000, right? Handwritten manuscripts, ancient Greek manuscripts. That's a very good number, actually. So it shows the knowledge production of the ancient Greeks. Guess how many Sanskrit, she just said, Sanskrit manuscripts are 3 million. These aren't just random manuscripts. These are ancient handwritten manuscripts that survive till today. So our ancestors wrote more than the rest of the ancient world combined. Yeah? So the thing that the British told us that ancient Indians didn't write, that we were an oral culture, that's a load of bullshit. Actually, ancient Indians wrote a hell of a lot, and they wrote more than the rest of the ancient world combined. And it wasn't just spiritual or religious texts. Much of it was was scientific texts, chemistry, mathematics, metallurgy, medicine. So there's a lot of things that we don't know, right? And there's a real world impact of us not being taught these things. In our education system, for example, if I can hear one of the younger people say that, what were you taught in your school? How many seasons are there in India? Anyone wants to answer? 7. Which school was this? Okay. 4 seasons? 6 seasons, okay. He's right. It's actually 6 seasons in India. But most schools, that's what I was taught, that's what my son is still taught, teach actually that there are 4 seasons, right? Summer, autumn, winter, spring. And I remember in the 2nd standard, I had asked my teacher, ma'am, monsoon kahan gaya? India actually has 6 seasons. Most of our boards, most of our school teach India has 4 seasons, when actually it is Europe that has 4 seasons. India has 6 seasons. Everyone has heard of Pythagoras? Yeah? Who has heard of Bodhayana? Just raise your hands. 2, 3, that's it. Just Bodhayana. Just 3 people have heard of Bodhayana. It will shock you to know European mathematicians accept that Bodhayana discovered Pythagoras' theorem before Pythagoras did, and it is recorded. It's not just a random thing. It was recorded in the Shilpa Sutras. How many have heard of the Hippocratic Oath? The medical, everyone has heard? Yeah, Hippocrates you would have heard of. Greek medicine man. But Shushrut, Charak, these are not taught in our schools. What's the Sanskrit word for year? Kal is time. Varsh, yeah, Varsh is the Sanskrit word for year. The Sanskrit word for country is also Varsham. Guesses, what's the root of this word? Varsha, rains. Our ancestors were clear that our entire country, our entire way of life is built around the monsoon season. But we are not taught this. So there's a real world impact also of not knowing things. It's not just a matter of pride that we would have of knowing Bodhayana or Shushruta and Charak. There's a real world impact. Our ancestors built their life around the monsoons. Because think of what the Indian subcontinent is the only part of the world which is like this, where we get our entire salary in terms of rain within 2 months. Imagine if you got your entire salary in 2 months. And imagine if you lived your life like in those 2 months you blew up all the money and the next 10 months you starved. That would be a stupid way of life, right? A normal way of life would be, I've got all my money in these 2 months, let's spread it out, let's manage it over the full year, and then I can lead a normal life. That's what our ancestors understood. Our entire way of life was built around water management and how to spread out these blessings. And to reinforce how important water was, Varsh was used everywhere, for year, for monsoon. We were obsessed about water. There's a German archaeologist called Gregory Possehl who created this term Wasserlexus for the Indian way of life, obsession with water. Look at how we modern people manage water. For these 2 months, we'll crib and complain about floods because our cities are not designed to manage rain. And then we'll have shortage of water for the next 10 months. Because our educated elite has no link to the Indian realities. Because of our education system. Because think of the buildings that we build. Glass wall buildings, you've seen them? Very nice. Yeah? But glass wall buildings emerged in Western Europe and in Northeast England, where it makes sense because there's a shortage of sun out there. So glass wall building makes a huge amount of sense. Heat from the sun comes in, you get heating, your heating cost goes down. The main problem is heating, right? Heating costs. Yeah, this is India. We don't have a shortage of the sun. We have an excess of the sun. We build a glass wall building. We are essentially building a giant microwave oven. And then we have to blast AC from the inside. Our architecture is designed for Western Europe. It's not designed for India. Our traditional architecture with a courtyard in the middle which would allow wind movement, which would, have jharokas which block direct sunlight, balconies, that makes sense. But our educated elite has been Europeanized, so mentally we are in Europe. So there's a real world impact of our education system not being decolonized. We lead unnatural lives and in many ways, frankly, worse lives. So that's why I keep talking about this. We have to decolonize our education system, reconnect it to India.
Also tell us about the new fad yoga, which everyone is now imbibing, and Ayurveda, and where it came from.
Yeah. So, like haldi doodh was uncool, but turmeric latte is very cool. It's the same thing with yoga, sadly. 30 years ago, it would be a Ponga Pandit thing to do. But now, because Westerners like it, we all want to learn it. Look, nothing wrong with it. As long as we're doing it, yoga is good for you. So even if it has re-entered our lives via the West, okay, at least it's re-entered our lives. But we have a lot of these practices already. Simple things like, not having antibiotics, but having kadha if you've got a cough. It's actually better for you. You lead a better life. I'm not anti-West. There are many good things about the West. We must learn that. I'm wearing a pair. Yeah, I live there now. I'm wearing a pair of jeans. This is perhaps one of the greatest, clothing inventions ever. So there are good things in the West. We should learn that. But there are a lot of good things, from our ancient culture as well, which can be good for us. Let's learn that too.
Okay, so moving on to the world of cinema, Suhail Dev, which has recently won the Golden Book Award, is soon going to be a movie. And Amish, you are turned producer for this with Immortal Studios. So we've been hearing about the movie. Tell us what's happening. What's the status?
Yeah, so I am producing it myself. I've opened a company in Mumbai called Immortal Studios, and we have a partner who's helped us raise funding called Vakao Films. They chose the name, I guess, in the 1990s when Vakao was still a cool word, and they've stuck to it. We made the script already, and now we are talking to a studio. So we are in production, and we should hopefully have a movie out soon. Hopefully in a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay, so we look forward to that. In the meantime, the Shiva Trilogy is also being converted to a web series by Shekhar Kapoor, Roy Price, and Suparn Verma of Family Man fame. So tell us about this. How many episodes? What's happening? When do we see it? On which platform?
Yeah, I'm damn excited about the team. It's a damn good team. Roy Price was the former head of Amazon Video. And he started the global head of Amazon Video. He started his own company now. And Shekhar Kapoor, everyone has heard of, I assume. Oscar-winning film director, the first Indian Oscar-winning film director for his work. And Suparn Verma, who all have seen Family Man? A good number. Apparently it is one of the biggest hits. OTT series ever, and Suparn had actually created, written and directed many of the episodes. So yeah, it's a fantastic team. Roy Price is producing it. Shekhar Kapoor is helming the full project, so he'll visualize, direct the first few episodes, and Suparn is writing the script and will direct the balance episodes. It's a damn good team, so I'm looking forward to it coming out. Yeah.
So when is that going to happen?
Well, we've just signed the deal, so and Suparn has just started writing.
So maybe a couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone knows that Amish is an ex-banker, went to IIM Calcutta, close by, and then moved into writing. And we all know there's another person who's done something similar. So we had Chetan Bhagat, who went to IIM Ahmedabad, also from the corporate world, started writing. And most recently, those of you who've seen Decoupled, Chetan has made some wonderful appearances. So we want to know, Amish, are you going to make some appearances like this in any web series?
No, I don't think I'll act. But I thought Chetan did a good job. I thought he was very sporting, and it was a surprise to see him, the first time. And then I thought he acted quite well. I'm not so sure I'll act, though I have taken up a project there's a documentary which I'll be hosting, which we'll be announcing soon. It's for an international channel, and it'll be released worldwide. It's a documentary on the Ramayana, so I'm hosting it. So it's not quite acting, but yes. So I'm kind of getting into the audiovisual space.
Front of the camera.
Yeah. But acting, I don't know, man.
Okay. Maybe we'll wait for Decoupled 2. Okay. For those who have read the Chandra series, we are eagerly waiting for the 4th book. What's happened to that?
I'm sorry, I know it's been delayed. Apologies once again. The book is ready. It's called War of Lanka. But we are, unfortunately, my publisher, Westland, it shut down. Rather, Amazon, which owned it, has shut down the company. So my team is negotiating with a few other publishers. We've close to finalizing the commercial terms, and the contract will get signed. So the delay is only getting another publisher. War of Lanka should hopefully be out by August, assuming all this closes quickly. So
coming to a war that we are fighting right now, the pandemic, the coronavirus war. So I want to ask you a couple of questions on this and your thoughts. So your father, Janet Tripathi, his father was a scientist, a nanotech scientist, and actually invented a nanoparticle molecule with a nano container platform to deliver a drug to treat disease for aging. And when I read about this, although in 2016, it connected me to Somras, 2010 Immortals of Melua. So how much has your father inspired the science in your work, and any other inspirations from your family?
Yeah, no, my father was a brilliant man. We lost him mid last year. The discovery that he'd made 2 discoveries, one on cancer diagnosis through a blood test, which we are just working at rolling out, and the other was this drug delivery mechanism. How many of you guys drink wine? Show of hands. And all those who drink wine, do you believe it is good for health? Yeah? Only 2. Okay. No, wine is actually good for health. Red wine, all alcohol, or rather let me put it this way, of all the alcohols that are available, wine is the least harmful for you because it has some good properties. The main thing that it has is red grapes has this thing called resveratrol in it, which once it enters your cell nucleus can solve a lot of genetic problems. So it's like a wonder material, if you want to call it that. The problem with wine is that to have enough resveratrol in your body on a daily basis so that it actually can impact your cells, you need to drink around 80 glasses of wine per day, which is obviously not practical. What people try and do, they try and inject resveratrol into themselves. That also doesn't work. It just goes out through your urine. No matter, people have tried resveratrol tablets, they've tried various things. Nothing works. It only when it comes from a natural thing like wine does it get absorbed. But wine, it's just too little resveratrol. So the invention my father made was actually a drug delivery mechanism. So he invented something which can take the resveratrol and enter your cell nucleus. So that was his invention actually. Utterly brilliant invention because it can be used for very many drugs. So he was an engineer basically, but a brilliant scientist. So large parts of the Somras theory in Shiva Trilogy actually emerged from discussions with him, because he was a brilliant scientist and he had the ability to simplify it in a way and explain it to you that even those who didn't know the science behind it, they could understand what was going on. Like this entire wine example was actually from my father. He told me this way to explain what his innovation is. So much of the Somras theory that you read in the Shiva Trilogy, was drawn by Dad.
So yes, we did hear the loss of your father. Sorry about that. And in this pandemic, there are many of us who have lost loved ones. You have mentioned that in our heritage and culture, Gautam Buddha has this fundamental belief, which is grief. So can you tell us more about it and how we can use these concepts or theories to navigate grief in our times?
Yeah, I've passed through a difficult personal phase as well. The last 5-6 years, lots of career may have done well, but lots of personal issues, tragedies, lost many people, and you need to find some way to make sense of what is going on. And in the dharmic religions, which is essentially Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, the philosophical roots are the same, but the lens is different. So Hinduism, the lens is Satchidanand. Anyone has heard of Satchidanand? What does it mean? Sat is truth, Chit is consciousness, Anand is bliss. Right?
Yes.
Correct. Pure bliss. So Satchidanand. Yeah. So the entire belief is that the lens is that we are blissful inside, but we can't experience that bliss because we have a lot of nonsense around it. So the spiritual journey is to strip away those nonsense layers so that you can feel the bliss inside and lead a happy, blissful life. And this is the lens I had for most of my life, but this lens doesn't work when you're passing through tragedies, because if someone says that, yeah, I know you may have suffered so much, but realize that you're basically bliss inside, your reaction is, what bliss, F you. It doesn't really work. And the lens which actually therefore worked for me is the lens that's there in Buddhism and the monk traditions in Jainism and Hinduism, that the fundamental reality of the universe is grief. That's the first of the 4 noble truths of Gautam Buddha. And we suffer if we don't accept this fundamental reality. So it's not कि मेरे साथ ये सब क्यों हो रहा है, it is सबके साथ हो रहा है. all of us suffer. All of us will get these periods in time. And you just accept it for what it is. Then you can move on. If you resist it, then you suffer. So this lens actually helped me. I'm sure many people have lost. It's been a difficult phase, the COVID period. Many have lost a lot of people. Maybe this lens of Gautam Buddha can help. Accept grief for what it is. It's a part of life, and then move on. You resist. When you resist it, you suffer more.
So during this pandemic, a lot of us have emerged as amateur bakers and singers, or these latent talents have come out in a lot of us. While most of you know that he went to a business school here, few of you would know that IMC has a very famous band. Anyone know the name of the band of IIM Calcutta?
Applause
Yes.
for her. Yeah, she's right. JBS and Barosi. Applause.
Yes. Oh, she's a
you're a
student.
student at IIM Cal. Okay, that's why you know. So the logic is JBS is Joka Bandstand, because that was apparently the bus stop out there, and Barosi 12C is the bus that goes from Calcutta to there.
The bus route. So even if you go right now, you'll see 12C. So that was the band. And Amish was the lead singer of the band in his time. So for those of you who have heard, there's a Vayuputra album where you have Tawfiq Qureshi, Bikram Ghosh, Sonu Nigam, Palash Sen of Euphoria fame, and Amish singing in that album. So during the pandemic, what else did you do other than writing?
No, not much else. Yeah, I was writing and very busy with online work at the Nehru Center. But I did sing and actually put up some videos. We got our band across. There was this software in which you could actually jam, sound across, simultaneously from different locations. So my friend Vikram Balla could play the guitar, and I could join in and sing, and someone else could join in and play the synth. Yeah, so we did that. We posted some videos, audio. It was great fun.
Okay, so you just heard...
I'm certainly not cooking. I mean, I can cook, but I have yet to find anyone outside of me who wants to try my cooking the second time. So, but it's good enough for me.
So you just heard Amish mention that he is now with the Nehru Center. So he's a diplomat based in London. And, I'm sure sitting there you have some view of us in India and otherwise. So we are going through a lot of geopolitical change right now. And some of the ways of life that we took for granted in earlier years is actually changing. So tell us, what have you observed? And students and parents, what kind of changes do they need to demonstrate in their behavior and actions?
Everyone knows the tsunami that had happened, right? More than a decade ago in Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka and coastal Tamil Nadu, etc. And imagine if you actually had pre-warning that a tsunami is coming. And many people on coastal Tamil Nadu could have run, or eastern coast of Sri Lanka could have run inlands and saved themselves. Pre-warned is forearmed, right? Because if massive wave suddenly just strikes you at the last minute, when you aren't prepared for it, you don't know how to handle it. One of the things, because I am a diplomat now and I engage with many geopolitical people, I go to many of these conferences, the world is changing at a pace in this decade that will be unfathomable. There's this line which is credited to Lenin often, that for decades nothing happens, and then in a few weeks decades happen. And that's the kind of phase actually we are going through. Many of the assumptions that we made on how we should plan our lives are not going to pan out. Like all of us had assumed that we could all travel smoothly and easily. That itself was broken by COVID. But we assume now that once the pandemic is over, it'll go back to that smooth level. Probably won't. We assume that actually, that there is a phase of globalization that we can go and study anywhere. We want to learn knowledge from anywhere. As is obvious, frankly, we can't. Because if we're going to have many more wars happening, like students were stuck in Ukraine. So we need to bear a lot more uthal-puthal in mind when we are making our decisions. So which country should you invest in? You know, will a new Cold War start? There are many things that we assume in our life. You have no idea how much US interest rates impact all of us. Impacts us right here in India as well. Again, it's like a tsunami. And US interest rates are going to rise because inflation is rising, because of the geopolitical battle. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is many of our assumptions of this globalized world are going to break down over the next decade. So how we make our decisions, we have to think through a lot more. We have to be a little more risk averse in how we make our decisions. We should be aware of what is going on in the world, because a lot of things will impact us. It's going to be a difficult decade. But there's this Chinese, ironically a Chinese saying, because this uthal-puthal began with a pandemic that started in China. But there's a Chinese saying that may you live in exciting times. And this is not a blessing, it's actually considered a curse. May you live in exciting times. Because it means that there will be a lot of drastic changes in those exciting times. And how the Chinese see it is, in these exciting times, fortunes can get made, fortunes can get lost, because it's a high risk, high return time. This 10 years, I think this next 10, 15 years will be like this. It's a high risk, high return time. We should be aware of that. And think through things before we make our choices and decisions. And realize that many of your choices will suddenly get... Who could have predicted that this COVID pandemic will come? So you have to be a lot more gritty, a lot tougher. And agile. Law of evolution is not that the strongest survive, it's the most adaptable who survive. When things change, you have to adapt. You know, like the COVID pandemic and GST has put book publishing in very serious financial distress. So platforms, authors, Litfests have to quickly adapt to this. OTT platforms have impacted us. We have to quickly adapt to this. You guys may not realize how much of our OTT budgets actually used to come from China, the China business. The China business may dry up, right? How will that impact us on OTT? The point I'm trying to make is next 10 years will be a lot of ups and downs. You have to be agile, you have to be flexible, you have to be adaptable.
So I think that's something we can all go back with.
Yeah, we live in exciting times. It's a Chinese curse.
So I have one last question for you before I open up to the house. That Durga Puja is very close to us here. And I think this Kolkata Lit Meet is yet another cultural event once a year, similar to Durga Puja, going on for 5 days. So since you are now in the Nehru Center and there's a lot of these intercultural dialogues, do we see the Lit Fest going to London? Durga Puja has already got the UNESCO tag. So
yeah. No. Firstly, Durga Puja is not intercultural, it's my culture. So Durga Puja is celebrated at the Nehru Center. We obviously couldn't last year in the pandemic. Things were done online. And in fact, we had a lovely Holi program as well with Donna Ganguly, who's from here in Kolkata. And which was a massive hit. She did, classes over a few weekends, and then we had a great Holi program, dances. We are, of course, going to be, celebrating Durga Puja as well. And I do intend to bring a Lit Fest to the Nehru Center. It will be one of the legacies I'd like to leave. So, yeah, that's something that's on the cards.
Interesting. So we'll see Kolkata Lit Meet.
Done. Janet, you have to be there.
I will. So questions to all of you. Have the mic. Before we go to you, I must say that yesterday there was a session of Amish, and there was this young lady in the audience who has read all your books. She's only in class 7. And she was very disappointed because her hand was not seen and she didn't get a mic. So I promised her to come today and she'll ask a question.
Okay.
So Soumya Saraugi,
Maybe start with her.
will you give her
That's
a
okay?
mic?
Yeah?
She's only 12 years old. She's read all of Amish's books and she has questions for him. Please give her a big hand.
Hi Soumya, how are you?
I'm fine.
Go ahead, what's your question? Tell me.
So for the Shiva Trilogy, you had 3 books. So the first book, it ended in a specific time of the whole story. And the second book started at that same time. So it was a continuous sequel. But in the Chandra series, you spotlighted 3 main characters, and on their whole lifetime and their events, it all ended up in one specific time when Sita got kidnapped. So I wanted to ask that what motivated you, what inspired you to make this kind of writing change in the Chandra series?
What a question, yeah. India has a damn good future, man, if these are our students. Very impressive. Is that your mother, Soumya? Okay. You must be very proud of her, yeah? Okay, I'll tell you what there's actually, sit, yeah, please. So, there's a storytelling technique which I use for the Ramchandra series. Look, the Shiva Trilogy in my mind was essentially one very long story, which was just divided into 3 books for convenience. Right? Because you can't release a 1500-page book. That's a human rights violation. So, so I just divided it into 3 books for convenience. That's all. So, which is why, you know, Shiva Trilogy, Immortals of Melua ends at a specific place, and Secret of the Nagas begins at that exact same point again. And the same with Secret of the Nagas and Oath of the Vayuputras. So, it's a linear story, right? Ramchandra series, I thought, one of the things that struck me, right? Have you read Lord of the Rings? Have you seen the movies? No? Anyone has seen the movies or read the books, Lord of the Rings? So, you guys might understand this. Soumya, check it out. I mean, I think you'll enjoy it, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is essentially told to us from the perspective of the humans, right? Not from the perspective of the orcs, okay? Not from the perspective of the elves. Now, I thought, how about if, you know, because you don't understand the story deeply till you understand each character deeply, right? Essentially, what is a story? It's carried on the shoulders of the characters, right? And the traditional Ramayana, you know, the word Ramayana itself, do you know what it means? No, it's not the story of Ram, actually. Ram, Yana. Arey, applause for her. What's your name? Huh? Pratyash. Applause for her. She's right. Ramayana literally means the journey of Ram. Ramayana. Right? That's what it literally means. So the Ramayana, the traditional Ramayana that we know, is essentially the story of Lord Ram. We hear his perspective all the way through, or rather, events connected to him. Right? But the 3 principal characters who drive the Ramayana forward are Lord Ram, Lady Sita, and Ravan. So I thought, how about if we have, you know, if we can understand all 3 characters deeply, and you hear their stories, and all of it coming to the same point where the 3 of them, because of the 3 of them, the journey of the story changes dramatically, which is the kidnapping of Goddess Sita, right? So there's a storytelling technique called the multilinear narrative, parallel storytelling. There's this Japanese movie called Rashomon. Sorry, I'm stumbling, but I assume you're an intelligent girl, yeah. So obviously you're reading my books, you're intelligent. So Rashomon is this Japanese movie. Anyone seen Rashomon? Okay. So it describes a mystery through the perspective of different characters. And then the same incident from different characters, you realize, shit, I'd assumed this was the truth. And then I hear some other character's perspective and I know there's another truth, right? So if we can understand the Ramayana also from 3 different perspectives, we'll get a much deeper understanding of why Ravan did what he did. It may not justify what he did, but we can still understand why he did what he did, right? Or why Goddess Sita behaved the way she behaved. Why Lord Ram behaved the way she behaved. And this is a technique that's possible only in this multilinear narrative. I saw it first in Rashomon, so which is why I thought it's a cool idea. It's a little complicated, but I think my readers get complicated. So the Ramayana is essentially story of Lord Ram, Ram, sign of Ikshvaku, from birth of Lord Ram till the kidnapping of Sita, Sita, warrior of Mithila, from the birth of goddess Sita to her kidnapping, Ravan, enemy of Aravarta, from his birth to the kidnapping. And War of Lanka, which is the next book, will be a common narrative, from the kidnapping of Sita till the death of Ravan. And it'll be with you soon. And I'll take your address from your mother and I'll send you a signed copy when it releases, okay? Okay.
Yes, we had some questions here. Can we have the mic?
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. With the historical fiction genre that we have, and of course India has a huge, huge base from where we can draw characters. The problem that I find with historical fiction, and one of the reasons that I kind of stopped reading it in a lot of ways, was because my cousins and my nieces, who were like 15, 12, 13, so one day we were sitting in a family surrounding, and they asked, do you know the story of Shiv? And she came and told your book's story as if it was a fact. And I was like, are you talking about the Shiva Trilogy? Yeah, that's the story of Shiv. And what I felt was that this generation, or the ones below us, kind of take this, because there's been a sort of an explosion of historical fiction in the last 15 years, be it Ashwin Sanghi, you, Chitra. So, and the people who are reading it, the younger generation, sort of now looks at it as fact. Somebody else remarked, because the Palace of Illusion, which was Chitra's, their Karan and she, Draupadi are, lovers. And so another niece said that that's the fact, and what they are showing in Mahabharata in the TV is incorrect. And of course, the ones that we are seeing, we perceive as Mahabharata or Ramayana, Tulsis and Ved Vyas, that's also possibly not the real version, but what we take to be the correct one. So how do you kind of look at what perceptions people are taking away from historical fiction writing?
Yeah, very good question. Look, I think the key thing in this is because the only truth we can be truly sure of is this moment, right? Everything else is essentially an interpretation. So, I mean, if I ask, a question that, how many of you believe that everyone knows Lord Karthik, obviously, yeah? So is Lord Karthik a bachelor, or or was he married? Who all say Lord Karthik was a bachelor? Yeah, around half the audience. Okay, hands down. Who all say Lord Karthik was married? Two of them. You'll notice I raise my hands for both, right? Because actually in North India, and Bengal is also follows that tradition, Lord Karthik is a bachelor, which is why one of his names is Kumar. But in South India, actually he's married. Any South Indians here? Yeah, so in South India, I studied in Tamil Nadu, by the way, for a few years. He's married. He has two wives, actually, Valli ji and Sena ji, right? Which is the truth? I don't know, right? Who's elder, Lord Ganesh or Lord Karthik? Again, depends on where you are, right? Who killed Ravan? Again, depends. And according to Rishi Valmiki himself, to Maharishi Valmiki, not any other interpretation. If you read the Valmiki Ramayana, Lord Ram killed Ravan. If you read the Adbhut Ramayana, which was also written by Valmiki ji, then Sita Ma killed Ravan, right? If you read any Jains out here, yeah? If you read the Jain version of the Ramayana, it was Lord Lakshman who killed Ravan, not Lord Ram, because Lord Ram was completely non-violent. I mean, Jain version, so he was completely non-violent in the Ramayana. Now, these are all true, right? Because it depends on perspective. And one of the things in the Indian way, there's this lovely line in the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bhahuda Vadanti. Truth is one, but the wise speak it as many. The only thing that I would look at is, does the truth aid the cause of unity, aid the cause of people coming together? Then it's a good truth. If it's a truth that aids the cause of dissonance and divisions, then it's a bad truth. There are so many people who believe that, because of Dan Brown's book, that Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene were married. There are many people who, believe that. That's not really what the ancient scriptures say. From what I know, I've read the Old Testament, the New Testament. From what I know, it's not really. Now, if an interpretation aids the cause of people coming together, okay, because who can be sure what the truth is? None of us can say with, that this is my truth, everything else is false. We can't do that. So perhaps that's the way I'd like to suggest we should approach it. Because even our ancients saw it that way, actually. They weren't sure what the truth is. So they said, let's find all possible perspectives of the truth. And if we are aiding the cause of people coming together, that's a good truth. Yeah.
That's what I think you said. There's no such thing as the universal truth.
I kind of put this in the same Ekam Sat Viprabhada Vadanti. I put this as a different line, that there is your truth and there's my truth, but there's no such thing like the universal truth. At least not when we are human beings. When we become God, yes, at that time we'll know what the universal truth is. But right now we don't know.
So we have time.
That's my interpretation.
For one more question, as they say. Can you just, yes, quickly, and just ask the question.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's
Hi.
an honor seeing you speak in
thank you.
person
Thank
because
you.
I've been a fan of you since long.
Thank you.
And just a small thing, my grandmother reads your books translated in Bengali because she can't. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
just wanted to. My question is that all of your books have such strong female protagonists, Lady Sati or Sita. We have seen them historically as very docile women, not really as headstrong as you have portrayed them. And there is this thing that male authors, I may be stereotyping a bit, but they tend to portray women in not very headstrong, perhaps sometimes in a very objectified way, or maybe in a very, they are weak, some way they are weak, but you don't do that. You portray them as very headstrong, as capable, intelligent human beings. So I wanted to ask, thank you for that, because it's as a woman it feels very good. And I wanted to ask, what is the motivation behind it, the inspiration behind it? What is the significance when you write? What do you think? How do you approach the female characters?
No, I'd love to say that I'm a cool modern guy and therefore I write it this way, but that would not be the truth. I think I am a cool modern guy, but that's not the reason why the stories come out this way. Our assumption of seeing women as docile and submissive is not really born close to the ancient scriptures, right? So again, pop quiz. How many of you believe that Lakshman Rekha is there in the Ramayana? Show of hands. Lakshman Rekha, is it there in the Ramayana, Lakshman Rekha? Yeah, vast majority is saying yes. Yeah, so that Lord Lakshman took his arrow and then drew a line, and and Sita Ma was supposed to stay behind that line. Yeah, it's not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. Okay? Sorry? Yeah, so it is not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. Most modern Indians have actually got this from a 1980s television serial. Okay, it is not there in the original. There is no Lakshman Rekha in the original Valmiki Ramayana. Okay, the first time, yeah, and Ramanand Sagar ji, I think he did a good job, but there are some things where I disagree with him. But he did a very good job, and I mean no disrespect towards him. But modern Indians, our conception of the Lakshman Rekha is basically on that television serial, right? Which was an interpretation. The first time Lakshman Rekha was mentioned in any text that I have read was actually in the Ramcharitmanas, which was written by Goswami Tulsidas ji, which was in the 16th century. And there also, it is not described the way it was there in the television serial. It was Mandodari taunting Ravan, where she mentioned Lakshman Rekha. That's it, right? So, and yes, by the 16th century, yes, the status of women had come down. But if you see our ancient scriptures, women are very strong. I'm not doing anything new, right? Our most ancient scriptures, the Rig Veda, it has hymns written by rishis and rishikas. It is often forgotten. We are not taught the Rig Veda, so we don't know, right? And rishis were the equivalents of women prophets and messiah. Rishis were the equivalents of prophets and messiahs. So we had women prophets and messiahs, right? In ancient India. Like I love saying to idiots who say women shouldn't read the scriptures at certain time of month, They wrote the scriptures 7,000, 8,000 years ago. That's what our culture was. We had women who ruled in their own name, like Prabhavati Gupta. We had women who led armies into battle, like Rudrama Devi. We had scriptures which say that the gods abandon the land and accept no prayers where women are disrespected. This is what our ancient culture was. We've forgotten a lot of it, right? We have to revive it, that's all. So I'm not doing anything new. I'm just staying close to what our ancient culture was actually. I just hope we can revive a lot more of that.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Amish, for a wonderful session, light-hearted, good fun.
Thanks,
And
guys.
thank you, everyone, for being here. Bye.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Amish. Thank you for being with us here last 2 days, and we hope to see you next year again at the Kolkata Literary Meet in January 2023. Thank you so much. A few of his books are available at the bookstore, so you can get them from there. It's just outside the East Gate.